Hey everyone. So, something that happens a lot, hold on, let me readjust. Something that happens a lot is we're caught in a bad situation, right? Say we're late for school, and you need to come up with a lie for why you're late. You know, some sort of excuse, and you just can't come up with one. And you know that no matter what you come up with, you're still screwed. Your only chance of survival at this point is to entertain the teacher. Now, obviously, you just showed up late. It's not like you do some sort of, dance routine, and she'd be like, alright, yeah, you're fine. I mean, if you are a dancer, maybe that would help. But, it's really not going to get to her. You have to take the expected, which is a lie. You have to take the expected lie that you're going to deliver and kind of twist it and make it an entertaining lie, so much so that she doesn't even care that you're late, or he, depending on what type of teacher you have. Maybe they're Siamese twins and it's a him and her, or it's a hermaphrodite, or it's a turtle with no gender. Okay, so I did not prepare this, by the way, so I have no clue what I'm going to say, and I promise, even if this comes out amazingly clear, and it's the greatest lie ever, this was all on the spot. So, you walk into class. Let's say your teacher's name is Jake. So, Jake's all like, hey, Peter, you're late for the 18th time this year, that means you're expelled. You're like, Jake, listen to me. I'm late, but I'm late for a good reason. You got a little tear rolling down your eye. You wipe it off. Maybe you plant some sort of dust on your shoulder so that you could dust yourself off and be like, all right, Jake, you're gonna have to sit down for this one. It's kind of an ungrueling tale. Ungrueling. That's not even a word. That's how warped my mind is right now after just what went down that caused me to be late. All this hype is built up. That's what you want. You don't want to get to the story right away. You want to make the hype build up. So Jake sits down. All right, Jake. What I'm about to tell you will change our lives forever. I woke up this morning normal time. The alarm worked perfectly. The alarm actually worked better than normal. I woke up, second alarm was up, I'm like, boom, I'm awake. I smell French toast downstairs. I'm like, alright, I could do this. I can go get my French toast, wake up, get to school on time. So, I'm all giddy and stuff, but I really want to get that French toast. But first, I had to put on my clothing, right? And the damnedest thing, none of my clothes were washed. Why? We killed the maid. Why did we kill the maid? Well, let me explain. The previous night, while I was doing my homework, the maid snaps. She just had enough of all the crumbs that she had to pick up from my dad eating cookies at midnight. Because my dad would literally eat a cookie and, the crumbs, that's what he would say, and he'd call her up at midnight, and the maid would have to show up and clean it, and she was just done. She was done. So that midnight, while I was doing my homework, up all night doing homework, not because it's challenging for me, because I enjoy doing it, so I do it 10 times over. Especially for your class, Jake. So you gotta smooch up a little, whatever it's called. So Jake's pretty impressed, but he wants to hear where the story's going, obviously. So you're like, my maid snapped. It was nuts. She showed up with a gun, and she's like, I'll kill him. I'll kill him. And she, you could imitate her accent or something. It's probably a French accent. And, so if you're that type of person that can imitate an accent, I'm not, so I can't tell the story that way. Point is, you continue telling the story. The maid snaps. She shows up with a gun. She's about to shoot my father. I show up with the shovel to the back of the head. Maid falls down on the ground. She's dead. We're like, what the hell are we going to do? You and your dad are looking at each other. We're like, we can't tell mom, right? Mom will throw a hissy fit because then she'll have to clean up our shit. So you're like, all right, we got to get rid of the maid without mom knowing. But mom, she's been hearing all this from upstairs. She walks slowly downstairs. Boom, shovel to the back of the head. Mom's not dead. She's just out cold because you hit her lightly, right? So now you got to tend to your mom, who's wounded, and you got to get rid of this maid. So back of your van, you're driving down to the lake. Dump the maid in the lake. You gotta get your mom back to consciousness somehow. So what you do is you recall what you learned in Jake's class, something about voodoo magic. You put some potions together, feed it to your mom. Your mom's better, right? But now your mom's suspicious. She's not buying into the idea that you love her. So you drive back, your mom's all like, you're not really that good of a son or daughter anymore, So, because you did hit her over the head with a shovel. She still loves the husband because she has no clue what the husband did. The husband wasn't the one with the shovel. But she still has no clue about the maid, by the way. So now your mom's not really on your side. So you go to sleep, right? You wake up, and you want the French toast. and none of your clothes were washed because the maid's dead. So you're like, all right, well now I gotta wash my clothing, but you're bare naked, right? So you gotta make this a mad dash type thing. So you dash down to the laundromat with all your clothing, in the morning. Well, time is pressing because you gotta get to school, and you're like, all right, come on, wash the clothes. And the dude's like, well, you're naked. We don't serve naked people. So then you're like, are you serious right now? And he's like, yeah, punk. So then he jumps over the counter and he's like, you want to fight? And you're having like a little stare down eye to eye and stuff. He pulls out the gun. You pull out the shovel. Back to the head. He's gone. Now you got to learn how to wash the clothing yourself. You had never done it before because the maid had been with your family your whole life. You actually loved the maid so much, and it was really this. You could also add this in, that how much the maid meant to you and that she's dead, and it's really just emotionally scarring. And you can't deal with this whole late fee right now. The late detention expulsion thing. But you're not going to say that's your excuse, because you can't use that type of stuff as your excuse. You just add it as a little sprinkle on top to the fact that you shouldn't be expelled. But anyways, you're like, all right, so you just killed the laundromat dude or whatever, or the dry cleaner, and you got to figure out how to work shit. You got to figure out how to make sure you can clean your clothing. So you read through the manual there. You read through like 600 pages in the matter of 30 seconds because you're such a great reader after all the stuff you learned in Jake's class. There, smooch up a little bit. You dry clean all the clothing. Bada bing, bada bing. All the clothes are finished. You put them on. You run over back to your house as fast as possible using all the running skills you learned in Jake's class. You got to add that in. Keep with the compliments. Now you're like, all right, where the hell's that French toast? You walk into the kitchen. Your mom's making the French toast. She's like, you ready for some French toast? And you're like, yeah, sure. You take one bite. Then you look at your mom. And you're like, this is poisonous. And then she's like, oh yeah, it is. I still don't forgive you for the shovel. And then you stare her down. You're like, you're not my real mom. And she takes off her mask, and it's the maid. The maid is back to life. And then the maid takes out a shotgun, and she's like, I'm not finished with you. And she's shooting, and you're like running all around the house, right? Then it kind of like recreates The Shining, right? You hide in the bathroom. You managed to get her shotgun. She managed to get the axe. The axe that she always carries. So you're hiding in the bathroom, and she's like, oh, here's Johnny, and she's axing open the thing, right? But it's not winter. You can't go into the maze and freeze her. It's not like The Shining in that way. So you have to figure out some sort of other thing to do. So you take your newly dry cleaned clothing, which is burning hot, you throw it onto her face. It sears her face terribly. So it's like the antifreeze. It's like, instead of her freezing to death, she burns to death. And then, then you run to the basement, and there's your mom bound up and, and gagged, and then you hug her, and you're like, Mom, I love you. And she's like, I love you too, but you gotta get to school. And you're like, yeah, I will. So then you run, and you're running to school, and then you get hit by a bus just on your way. And who's driving the bus? The maid. And you're like, God damn buses, why'd you have to hit me? And then the maid walks out with the shotgun again, and you're like, not this time. And then you get in the bus, and you hit her even harder, and then she's dead again. And you're like, all right, now I really got to get to school. Now I really got to get there because I'm already 30 seconds late. And I know my teacher allows that, but a minute late is just too much. So you're running as fast as possible. Within that 30 seconds, you actually solve all the world's problems. Right? You actually solved all the world's problems. You solved the cure for cancer, hunger, whatnot. What do we do with Lindsay Lohan, You solved all that stuff. And you run to school and you're like, oh my God, Jake, I'm sorry that I'm late. And then, in that instant that you had, that you were so upset about being late because it's so dramatic to you because you really didn't want to miss any of Jake's class, you had forgot all the stuff that you had solved in your 30-second dash. Nevertheless, even though you forgot all that stuff, you're happy that you only missed a minute, and that you hope that nothing else will happen to disturb the class. You sit down and you're like, so what are we learning today? And then everyone's just, so, how are you going to expel that kid? And that's how you lie.